Welcome to all of you. Welcome to Renault eWays, a unique event dedicated to mobility today and tomorrow that gathers the men and women who are taking tangible actions to meet challenges towards zero emissions. We're live from Hangar Y, an industrial building in the town of Meudon, close to Paris. With me today, Jean-Philippe Hermine, Vice President Strategic Environmental Planning for Renault. Hello. And then Pascal Müller, Regional Director of the Hauts-de-France and Grand Est region at Sarpi Veolia. And from the US, we have Martin de la Garde de Saignes, Executive Vice President, Global Head of Mining Solutions at Solvay. Good afternoon, gents. How are you? Fine. Good. What about you, Martin? I'm fine, thanks. Wonderful. As the name says, Renault eWays intend to explore all the ways that we can think of so that we reach zero carbon mobility. And we have to explore crucial topics such as batteries. Now, let me give you general information about the number of electric vehicles on the road, going from 8 million in 2020 to 116 in 2030. That is 116 million batteries. And we know that batteries wear and tear over time. Similar to what we have on our smartphones, the batteries have to be recycled. Recycling is an essential topic, and this is what we'll be talking about today. The title of our discussion is Battery Life Cycle. Now, Jean-Philippe Hermine, we're talking about circular environments. What are the objectives in the field of recycling batteries of EVs? Well, as you said before, the challenges are recycling, that's true, but also the life cycle of these batteries. These objects are technological revolutions, and we have to produce, but with less or zero carbon. This is what we intend to do, zero carbon emissions on our cars. And when we look at second life of batteries, you will see that we can reuse them. And therefore, the question has to do with the environment. And also what's at stake is general economy, because the battery has a value on the car, but also has a value later on when it's recycled. And it's an industrial objective as well, because we have to organize all of these industries. Now then, if we want electric mobility to be accepted by people, it has to be competitive. It has to meet clear objectives. And to do this, we have to manage the life cycle of batteries so as to make the best use of these batteries during their life cycles, and also to guarantee access to commodities and raw materials, because these batteries at the end of their lives will become a commodity of raw material. And this is what we do in circular economy, which is what we'll be talking about this afternoon. At Renault, we manage the life cycle of these batteries. That means that we have gained 10 years of experience, and this is why we are strong. We started entering the market before any other competition, and we have a repair system so that we can have battery life extenders, if you will, so that the batteries last longer. And then we focus on batteries' second life. This means when batteries are no longer used on the cars, that is, there's not enough power to drive the car, then these batteries are still something useful to store energy and to give energy. So we can use them, and that's what we call second life. Renault has a wealth of experience in that respect. We've worked with partners to find second life applications, stationary systems, but also mobile systems. Let me give you an example. We've worked with Carwatt. They change vehicles. They revamp these vehicles so that they become hoisting systems, or so that we can also use electric vehicles at the airport. And also we use these batteries on boats. Boats require also a storage of energy so that we can power these boats. This is really something interesting in terms of an outlet or a market. We've also looked at these systems to store renewable energy. This is what we do in Porto Santo on a island, we have worked with mobility players so as to develop an ecosystem that uses renewable energies to power the different vehicles. But since the energy is produced at moments when it's not necessarily going to be used immediately, we store energy for a little while in second life batteries, and then we inject the energy into the grid or the other electric systems later on, which means we want to have a zero carbon area or region, which is the case on the island of Porto Santo, which is a very interesting example. Did you want to add something? Yeah, absolutely. You see, it's an interaction between the vehicle and the world of power. And it goes beyond second life issues, because even during the first life of the batteries, we've worked on solutions when cars are not driven, for instance. We want these cars to be able to store power and energy and give it back. This is what we call G2G. And we're going to have more and more electric vehicles, and when cars are parked, they can still store and give power. This is going to be good for the grid, and also it's going to be good as a lever for the introduction of renewables. Jean-Philippe, what's the circular economy in Renault's strategy? It's a very important aspect of our strategy. We started working on that point in the early stages. We are the leaders. We were the pioneers. To start with, for cars, it was an obligation for the car makers. We have to recycle 95% of the mass of the vehicle. That's done. We have other regulations on the recycling of batteries. Maybe we'll talk about this later on. But as I said before, it was really upstream, that is more than 10 years ago. That's when we decided that circular economy, that is life extension of batteries, recycling materials in a loop, including recycled parts on our vehicles, we decided that this would give us a cutting edge. And we said that we would be more resilient as well. Our business model would be more resilient. We would have access to other resources. And at Renault, we decided to invest quite a lot of money in that, so as to develop an industrial tool that would cover the whole life cycle. That is, we've invested in companies that are recycling companies, and also reprocessing companies and repair companies, and all of these companies generate more than 500 million euros in revenues. It's an industrial tool that Renault has developed so that we can work on these projects such as life cycle extension, second life of batteries, recycling of materials, and this is what we've succeeded in doing in a unique way in the field of car makers. That's true for the batteries, but what's also important is that we've decided to set this up because we wanted to bolster the value of products, but also the value of materials that we collect at the end of their life cycles. But what's very important is to renew the products, to extend the life cycles of products, to give a second life to materials. And this really meets the new challenges, that is, new behaviors and new mobility needs. When people talk about car sharing, new mobility services, what people are talking about is the fact that we need to find new solutions, because products have to last longer, and the use that people make of the products keep on changing. So we have to find solutions for the customers who want to revamp their vehicles, upgrade their vehicles, change the source of energy they use. There are so many things we can use, like digital development, that we have to give guidance to our customers. And for that, we have a huge project at Renault, which aims at developing the first platform for circular economy in the factory of Flins, on the basis of cars, of course, since the objective is to give customers and society in general all of these solutions in an industrial manner to meet these new challenges. Okay, can you tell us more about this recycling industry that you've been working on for the batteries? Well, we've worked with the best partners with whom we work in partnership, Veolia, Solvay, and other names. And also, we used our own in-house resources. As I said before, we've invested in companies, recycling companies, and today we work with Indra, and we are the biggest recycling network for cars in France. 300,000 units are managed. From that, we strip the cars, we get raw materials, we reprocess those thanks to a company called Gaia, one of our subsidiaries, and they reprocess the materials so that we can upgrade the materials and reuse them on the Renault cars. What people don't know usually is that in new cars, there's 30% of recycled parts, even though these are new vehicles. So this is what we can do. We have raw materials all the time. That is going to give us a cutting edge, and it's really positive for the environment. This is what we want to talk about when we discuss with our customers. Okay, now let's talk about not the challenges, but the solutions in the field of recycling. Could you perhaps introduce yourself, Martin, and then Pascal? We'll start with you, Pascal. Pascal, can you tell us what you do? Well, I work in a subsidiary owned by Veolia. We recycle hazardous products, and a car battery, is hazardous waste by definition. It is hazardous because the different parts could harm the environment. We've been doing this for 40 years, and this existed before Veolia existed, and what we want is more recycling solutions so that we can reuse products if we think there's still value in these old products. Okay, crystal clear. Martin. Hello, Louise. Well, I'd like to thank Jean-Philippe. I'd like to thank Renault for inviting me, because I think this is an important and strategic topic. Well, I work for Solvay. It is a Belgian group, and I'm in charge of what we call mining solutions. What do we do? Well, we provide products for the mining industry. Extraction molecules, thanks to which we can extract metals such as copper, cobalt, nickel, lithium, which you have in ores. And therefore, since we are the global leaders in these mining solutions, primary mining, it was important for us to look at adjacent applications. That is secondary extraction, where we can find metals, where we need to consider separation from the ore. And on the batteries, we have quite a lot of metals. These metals have value, and this is what we're going to do at Solvay. We're going to extract these metals in the recycling loop. Thank you very much. What are the solutions now that you have found? How can we recycle EV batteries to start with? The first step, I suppose, is collection. Correct. And this is what we have to do. It's our responsibility. These batteries are on our cars, and the regulation says that we have to recycle these batteries. At the garage or elsewhere, we are a major player. Renault does that. We recover and collect the batteries, and also there are many customers that rent the batteries. This is what we have for our clients, the possibility of renting the battery, which means that usually we will own these batteries throughout their life cycles. And you're right in saying that what's important is the collection of old batteries. So what we're going to do is what we did with computers or cell phones. It's lithium and ion collection industries. But the difference with EV cars is that we'll have 100% of these batteries that will collect again. Nobody can throw them down the drain or in the dustbin. So we'll collect all of these batteries. We'll check that we use the full potential of these batteries. That is, first, we try and find a second life. And these second lives, it can last 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And that's when we send these batteries to the recycling centers. And Veolia is going to be the first player then. Okay, so we'll turn to Veolia then. Can you tell us about the following steps then, Pascal? As Jean-Philippe said, what's interesting is that this is a big technology. A battery can weigh up to 200 or 300 kilos. So it's a big thing, a battery is. But we started working on these batteries more than 10 years ago. And when customers have waste, they usually call us. They say, oh, hello, I have that much waste. Could you process this? Well, this is complex. A waste is complex to process. There are environmental challenges. It might be risky. So we have to manage waste as best as we can. The good thing about EVs is that Veolia has expertise in terms of recycling portable batteries, lithium and iron batteries. The chemistry of all that is more or less the same, so we have knowledge. And in the past 10 years, with Renault, we looked at processing solutions for these EV batteries. We know how to manage these batteries today. We have technologies thanks to which we can do this. When we get the batteries, we look at the battery's condition. We do this in a very safe manner, and then we discharge the batteries to make sure that there's no hazard or danger for the mechanics that will handle these batteries, and then we dismantle the batteries. It's a mechanical process, as you can see, it's mechanized. And that's when we strip down the battery to try and see if we can reuse some of the parts without any reprocessing. More or less 30% of the batteries will be recovered. That's casing, for instance, or wiring that we can reuse later on for production and manufacturing purposes. It's circular economy, correct. And then the following steps, as you can see here, phase 2. This is what we have a knowledge in. We depollute circular economy. We remove anything that's toxic and we re-inject materials that we can reuse. So there's crushing, for instance. We can extract and separate the different materials with screening of metals. We can extract some pollutants. And what we get at the end of the day is active materials. That's more or less 40% of the total mass of the initial battery. This is like a powder. It's an ore which has all the strategic elements that we want, like cobalt, nickel, lithium, copper again. And then the next step is chemistry, fine chemistry. The objective is to extract in a selective manner each of these metals to get cobalt salt or nickel or lithium salts that we can then reuse in the industry. By and large, today, if you look at a battery, when we get these batteries, we have between 55 and 60% of the total mass of the battery, which we can reuse in terms of materials. We can reuse these different parts. 20% of these batteries will be plastics or solvents that are polluted or that have gone through wearing and tearing, but we can reuse those as a source of energy. That is, we can process the waste and produce electricity. And then there's still 20% that we cannot recycle today. And this is what we do in research and innovation. We want to be able to recover more so that we use the full value of these batteries. Good. Now, Martin, what's the role of Solvay then in this chain? Well, it's quite simple, you see. I think Pascal's really explained everything clearly. After extracting all of the residual materials, we come up with the chemical expertise. We are experts in chemistry, and as Pascal said, we separate the different elements. As we speak, the process developed by Veolia is not good enough to have a purity level which is good enough to reintroduce all of these salts for similar applications. We can't reuse them directly on any other new battery. At present, Veolia's recycling can be used in alloys, for instance. And our expertise, that is what we've developed in our mining solution department, is selectivity. And it's much more than selectivity. we reach a high grade or a high purity level so as to reintroduce all of the metals we take from batteries to inject them again in the loop. So this is our expertise. Our expertise comes at that moment. It's chemistry. These are the separation processes and extraction with hydrometallurgical processes so as to extract these materials from the flows we get from Veolia, and we'll extract the different metals at a purity level which is going to be such that we'll be able to reintroduce them in the battery cycle. And therefore, what we do is sustainability. It's a circular type of recycling. We work hand in hand with Veolia, and this is why I think this partnership is interesting. We look for the experts where they are so that we find as much value as we can from these batteries. Wonderful. How do you work together, by the way? Could you describe your cooperation? Well, it's a historic cooperation that we've had with Veolia, and we've worked on neutralization, preparation of batteries, and when the batteries are marketed, or were marketed rather, we decided to work with partners such as Veolia so as to develop these industries. And the question is the loop, the recycling loop. This is what we think is important. And we decided to work with both Veolia and Solvay because we wanted to do even more. We wanted to find more skills. For instance, in chemistry now, they get on well together, they develop processes together, so the three of us work together. So what we need is raw materials, knowledge, and also sharing a vision, sharing the challenges. And by the way, as you can see, this is true in all domains. Mobility is changing nowadays from the technological point of view, and it'll make sense only if we consider having a systemic approach. That is, find the best skills that were not shared before, and put the different stakeholders together. As I said before, we interact with the power generators or power companies to bring solutions, and it's the same in our case. We decided to pool our efforts, to pool our skills, so as to work on the best topics at the right pace, because we think it's very important to meet the needs expressed by people. This is what we do together. They will tell you more about the technical partnerships that they have set up. Correctly. Well, if you want to recycle, you have to be very ambitious. You have to think long term. And recycling of metals is one thing. It's true for batteries, but what really is at stake is resources. We know that these materials might harm the environment. There's also CO2 emissions at stake and health of populations, and there are social impacts as well. Some of the metals on the batteries are not necessarily metals we can find in Europe. And therefore, what we need to consider is circular economy. These vehicles we have in France are like an urban mine that we'll have tomorrow. So we have to extract from these moving urban mines. We have technologies today to do this. We know how to reuse metals for some alloys or stainless steel to produce a new car. We know how to do this. We have knowledge. We can do this thanks to chemistry. And several years ago, with Renault, we thought, can't we finish this loop, this recycling loop? That is, we reuse these metals in open loop industries, but we would like to upgrade these metals so as to produce new batteries. And as I said, we talked about this, and then Renault was almost like an intermediary for us, and that's when we met Solvay, the Solvay teams. Now, technically, we have been working on a partnership. At the beginning of September, it was made official. We work on these products. the products that we extract from the batteries at Veolia, but Solvay is an expert group in fine chemistry. And they purify these metals, they upgrade these metals. Now we'll listen to Martin. Well, thank you, Pascal. But I think we should thank Jean-Philippe again and Renault again, because they were smart. They were the ones who thought that Veolia and Solvay could work together. And what we're telling you is that what's important in circular economy is to find the right skills. And maybe it takes several partners. And this partnership that we set up with Veolia is one of these examples, thanks to which, as Pascal was saying, we have to be ambitious, thanks to which we'll be able to meet our objective. That is, we'll be able to reintroduce all the metals that we have on a battery and reuse them in the recycling industry so that we can consider again another life on another battery. And today, we don't have some metals like cobalt, nickel, and lithium. These metals can be found in what I would call exotic regions, mainly Africa, South America. So what we need is to be able to reuse these metals. It's essential. And thanks to our partnership, we find the best Veolia skills, like collection of metals, like also crushing batteries or the black mass that we reuse so as to extract metals. And, well, we had been also working on what we call the urban mine, that is secondary sources of metals. We have acquired skills for a number of years. And regardless of the flows to be processed, our chemistry department will be in a position to extract the metals in a selective way. Therefore, this technical partnership that we're currently developing with Veolia, and we hope it's going to be more than just technical in the future, helps us benefit from Veolia's skills, Solvay's skills, and extract metal salts that will be at a grade that is such that we'll be able to reintroduce them in the loop. When I prepared this interview, I read that we will have to recycle 50,000 tons of batteries in 2027 and probably more in 2030. I don't know if the numbers are correct, but those are the numbers I've found. Do you think we're ready for mass recycling, Pascal? The numbers you've given are correct. That is, for 2027, that means a lifespan of 10 years. Well, Jean-Philippe may tell me if I'm wrong, but that's 10 years. You're very conservative. Okay, I'm conservative. Well, we could consider that today we have 200,000, 200,000 EVs sold in 2017. So 300 kilos per battery. So yeah, the number's probably correct. Now back to the question you asked, that is, will we be able to manage these volumes, I think is what you asked. Well, you know what, we're lucky in the recycling of batteries. Well, we have a clear vision as to how we want to recycle these batteries. We know exactly the quantities of EVs that are sold in France, in Europe, in the world, per country, per continent. And we know that their life cycle is, let's say, 8, 10, 12, 15 years. So we know more or less when we'll get these batteries back. And this is what we do. And thanks to research, we can enhance the quality of our recycling, but also we invest. And this year and next year, we're going to invest even more so that we can meet the demand for the recycling of these batteries. Now, that's really good to have such a vision. Apart from batteries, Jean-Philippe, what's Renault's strategy in the field of recycling EVs. Well, of course, we don't just focus on batteries. We're interested in all parts. There's copper in the engine. There's all the raw materials we have when these vehicles are no longer used. And what my two friends have described is the recycling of the raw materials of the battery. And we've done that as well for many more parts and materials. It's not a new idea. We have different material loops. For example, we get our copper from wiring you take from your cars. With Indra, we reprocess those, we upgrade and find the best purity level to reintroduce copper. And we do this as well with plastic and polypropylene coming from the bumpers. We produce granulates or pellets for the bumpers, and we process them into pellets or granulates, and we re-inject them so as to produce other car parts. In a loop again. What we do as well is that we collect all catalytic exhaust pipes, and with those we process them ourselves so as to obtain platinoids, thanks to which we can produce new cars. So you see, these are the types of projects. There's another one that we developed recently for textiles. We've developed a recycled textile or fabric that we've used on Zoe cars. We have 8 square meters of fabric on upholstery, seats and trimming inside from recycled textile, mainly coming from old cars. So it's a loop again. These are the types of examples I could share with you. That's quite interesting in terms of protecting the environment. The impact is massive. Economically, it's really good. We're more competitive. We have access to raw materials. We know that some of these commodities will be scarce in the future. That's why we're working with Veolia and Solvay. We're trying to gain positions so that we cover the supply chain and produce batteries tomorrow. It's the whole logic of circular economy. This is what we've started working on at Renault. Well, that's very interesting. I suppose we've received some questions, so now the Q&A. I suppose that you might have questions. Please send them in right now. I think we'll start with the very first question. Will you do more or less the same in other countries as well? Well, maybe I can try and answer this for Veolia. My answer is yes. Today, on some continents, let's talk about continents. In Europe, for instance, we've developed solutions at Veolia in Europe. And thanks to these solutions we've developed, we'll be able to meet the volume objectives in the years to come. We'll probably not have factories in each and every single country. As Jean-Philippe said before, we'll probably start with dismantling the cars, stripping them down, probably crushing, and then chemistry requires bigger sites, bigger facilities, and more capital expenditure, and more people. But anyway, we've already transferred some of our skills to China. We're doing business in China, and we're working in partnership with Chinese companies on dismantling, on crushing of batteries, and also we intend to grow in the US, for instance. This is one of our targets. We'll have to consider this because regulation is something very important. I concur. I agree with you, Pascal. We have to do things gradually. Today, well, as far as our cooperation is concerned, we've decided to focus on Europe for regulatory purposes, or reasons rather, but we're ambitious. We want to do more and not just focus on Europe. We want to look at other geographies. Today, we work with some companies that work in the recycling of batteries. We're very ambitious. We work on extractants for them and with them. If we do a good job in Europe, we'll probably look at other regions. Okay, thank you, Marta. Do you also recycle PHEV batteries and HEV batteries? Yeah, no different. No problem. Well, to start with, the technology was a bit different compared to the lithium-ion technology, but the majority of those is lithium and iron. The chemical processes are the same. Okay. What about the idea of solid batteries? Would this be reshuffling the whole recycling industry altogether? Well, recycling is all about managing the end of life of products. And by definition, when we design products, we have to think about recycling them at the end of their lives. So that's our job. This is what we do. We develop solutions, and therefore we'll adapt. And of course, we'll come up with solutions for these new markets. Well, you're talking about chemistry on the batteries, but there are other things to be considered as well, other systems that we're studying at present for different types of usages, other products we have on our cars today. So we'll have a broader portfolio. We're getting ready for that. And when we design the batteries, when we design these vehicles that'll have batteries that use new chemical processes, we include recycling from the word go. That is, what is the impact on the environment, what cost, what's the value of raw materials. All these things are things we think about, and they're included in our roadmaps. Good. Now then, would you say that recycling batteries pollutes? Well, what we do is we develop industrial processes, so there might be environmental impacts. Now, I have two answers to this. The first has to do with the European regulation. In France and in Europe, we have stringent regulations, which is good. We have standards that we have to follow. And we're an industrial business, and recycling is an industrial business. We have to meet the regulation, which is what we do. We do that for batteries, we do that for other products. And the second element, which is important as well, is that in our project with Renault, we've analyzed the life cycle to assess the impact of what we do compared to a new battery. And the conclusions show that recycling has positive effects. Recycling the battery is less harmful to the environment than producing a new battery. And of course, not talking about the environmental impact of electric vehicles in general. What's important about this when we look at life cycle analysis, and we worked on this with Veolia, is to show that secondary extraction processes have an impact on the environment, of course, but lower than primary extraction. Primary extraction means extraction from existing mines. So we see that there's a positive impact on the environment, a positive one, as I said. Okay, good. Next question. What are the components that are easily recyclable and those that we think are hard to recycle? Well, what is easily recycled is casing, wires, because you don't need to reprocess them. Those made of aluminium and copper, mainly. That's true. Or stainless steel or steel. You just have to strip the car and reuse the different parts. But then when it comes to processing and reprocessing, usually, well, most of these metals are complex to extract. But we know how to extract these metals because these metals can be recovered and reused. What's more complicated is when it comes to organic fractions. For instance, glue or plastic or propylene or solvents as well. These products wear and tear during the life cycle, and during processing, they can be polluted as well. And we need to have a high grade of products so that we can reintroduce them in the loop. And those are the most difficult ones to recycle. But we have to be ambitious, and therefore we're working on these as well. Who finances the recycling of batteries? if we look at current prices, do they factor in the recycling of batteries today? Who's going to finance recycling of batteries? Well, we hope it's the value we get when we recycle these raw materials. There's a cost for processing, that's true, but at the end of the day, there's net value that's created because all of these products, cobalt, nickel, copper, aluminium, have a value on the market. And therefore, what we hope, and that's almost what we're doing in some cases for some batteries. It depends on their size and the chemical processes, but these batteries have more or less of these materials, and in some cases, these batteries are positive in terms of value. So the first answer is recycling. Recycling, thanks to which we'll be able to finance these batteries, which is a need that all societies have to recycle batteries. But also, the manufacturers have also to do something. They have to set up this industry, the recycling industry, and fund most of the costs connected to collection of waste and processing. This is why we're working with companies such as Veolia and Solvay, so that we're certain today that we minimize the processing costs and we maximize the value we can get from these old batteries. Can I say something in addition? That is, for those in the recycling business, what we're not comfortable with is the price of commodities and raw materials. So recycling will not just be financed on the basis of the metals we can sell. And therefore, what's very important for us, Veolia, is to look at processing costs, the cost of recycling, and then the value of the metals you can extract. Our objective is to extract as much value from the metals as we can, because the manufacturers and the clients need that. Okay, we have time for a final question. Recycling of raw materials. Will you be able to produce enough to meet the new needs? Well, we hardly have 10 million vehicles today. We'll need more than 100 million vehicles in the future. And as we said, the life cycle of these batteries is 10 years plus 10 years for second life. So recycling is too late. The quantities are too low today to produce new batteries in the future. So for the time being, no. My answer is no. Recycling is not enough. We need to wait several years. Yet, we want to continue and maximize recycling, and we'll do our best so that we can still reuse these raw materials so as to produce new batteries. And we have many examples of recycling that show that between production and recycling, there's time that goes by. But we have many examples that show that after a while, recycling is a closed loop. When it's stable between manufacturing and the collection of raw materials, we can produce up to 80 or 90% of the materials we get from the recycling loop. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Now that's the end of our very interesting conversation. I've learnt so many things. And I'd like to thank you all. And if you want to have more information on the roundtable, if you want to watch that session in replay, all the information is available on the website. Thank you very much, and we'll be with you again soon. Thank you. Goodbye.